Hello. Welcome to The Play That Changed My Life, brought to you by Harbinger. I'm Patrick White, and we are here with a holiday break edition of The Play That Changed My Life. We're going to talk about some issues or discuss higher education in performing arts, and I have two great guests with me today. I have Dr. Krysta Dennis, who is the producer of creative arts at Siena College, and Caitlyn Efner, who is a senior at Wagner College in Staten Island. Go Sea Dogs, right? Seahawks.
We've got the dogs. We've got the St. Bernards.
There. That's how I mixed it up. Great. So welcome. Hello.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Having a great holiday season. Yes. Excellent. You lie. No, we were just talking beforehand about what Caitlyn's up to. She's very busy on her holiday break, and I wanted to. It's so good to see you. But I wanted to grab Caitlyn and Krysta just because, you rarely have the opportunity to speak to the students who are away all year. We have this great performing arts training ground in the capital region. I want to talk a little bit about that, and then all these the youth go off to schools, and I wanted to see, how is the capital region preparing our students for performing arts. And Krysta's here, and she can talk about Siena College has just added a major.
Yay!
In theater, which is very exciting.
It sure is. Kind of the opposite of what's happening in a lot of other places with the arts. We have an administration that really values the arts, and so I'm not going anywhere.
That's fantastic. Great news. Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So to kick off on this holiday break edition, what have you been working on, or have you just taken this time to recharge?
Want to take it away?
Sure. So right now, I'm working on a piece with Jack Cummings III of Transport Group. He's the creative director, artistic director, and it's called 1939. It's a completely devised piece. That's kind of what he does best. He's a visionary. I love him. And it's taking a look at the year 1939 and the kind of contrast between what was happening in America at the time and Europe. And we're looking at the films from 1939. So you've got like Ninotchka, Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, and we're kind of taking those movies, and we're taking the dialogue from those movies. Just the only dialogue in the show will be from those movies, and we're creating the script based off of that. And right now, it's looking like it's gonna be a couple. It's just me and one other actor, and a couple who is kind of trapped in probably Germany, in a hotel room, and so I'm watching the movies for that right now.
Wow.
So cool. That sounds like so much fun.
It's really cool.
So you're looking at Europe also? What kind of stuff have you not done that part of the process?
We haven't done that part yet. Yeah, we've just been
Cool.
watching the movies mostly and doing the research that goes along with that. So I've watched 42 movies from 1939 so far, and I have 8 left to watch over break. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's known as a legendary year of movies, but I've never really considered as far as socially, what was going on and how it reflects that, and then to take it,
rumblings of war across
and then to
the
take
pond.
it and put it in, from the European eyes, is even more
It's really,
so
really
cool.
cool. And my castmate, he's actually Romanian, so it's been really cool to get that kind of perspective because, you know, we've been rehearsing during the semester on weekends, so we'll do 2 6-hour rehearsals. And Raresh, my castmate, I've been learning so much about his life in Europe and kind of his perspective looking at World War II, and oh my gosh, I'm really grateful. It's been a really cool experience.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it will have a performance?
Yeah, we'll be doing a workshop of it. It looks like May 12th is the date that we're going for. In this, it'll be at Wagner somewhere, probably in our black box. Yeah, but
What's the trip to Staten Island like?
it's 3 hours of joy.
3 hours. Yeah, I would think longer.
No, it's honestly 3 hours is kind of on the long end. It's usually like 2.5 if you don't really hit traffic.
Oh, that's great.
Depends on like what time you're leaving.
Is it
And
possible to not hit traffic on that drive?
sometimes, like if we leave really early in the morning.
Oh, okay.
That's great. No, I would have guessed it was more onerous than that.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Same.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can get to 42nd Street in 2.5 hours. I would think Staten Island would be
We have
5 hours.
cross the city.
Yeah, we have to get on a boat.
No, I mean the fair. Yeah, it's a whole other. Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, on Thanksgiving though, like Thanksgiving weekend, we had to leave at like 5 a.m. because
Yeah.
I mean, one time we left at like 9 in the morning and I didn't get there until like 5. Like it was insane.
Yeah, awesome. All right. And how's your break?
Let me get my scroll out to tell you what I've been working on. So many things, great things. So as producer, I'm working on all of the projects, right? So at Siena, and I have some stuff that I'm doing as well. So the theater major was like the big project. That is the big thing that my colleagues and I have crafted and put together. We are currently working on a Rob Handel play called Amaze that will be in the not the first two, the second and third week of March. It is a new play about a rock band that has created a concept album based on a graphic novel. And it turns out that the graphic novelist has done a really terrible thing. So they have to decide whether or not it is okay to release this art that is based in something awful. So I think that really spoke to the students, this kind of art and ethics quandary. And it's fun. It's super fun to design. Part of it lives in the graphic novel world. So there's real world and there's, heightened environments with all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's fun. We are doing... This is not we. This is me. Well,
The royal we.
It's always we in theater, right? We picked a collaborative art form. It's always we. I is very suspicious, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe playwrights can say I. Maybe. So I am directing a staged reading for Theater Voices called The Hatmaker's Wife, and it's I guess this is the semester of magical realism. So yeah, I'm leaving Siena to go play for a couple of nights a week with some amazing, amazing actors. I nearly fell over. I could have cast the thing 4 times with the people that turned up. I'm humbled and blown away by the talent in the Capital Region. So that's in mid-February. So we're starting up next week. And I have one other project that I am ruminating on because this is for the future. I've done a lot of stuff with historic sites, and I think theater making is a great way for people to learn about history. It humanizes and makes easily relatable figures from history, right? Like when I wrote a play about anti-suffrage women, mostly because I couldn't understand how any woman could be against her own enfranchisement. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to dive down a research hole. And sure enough, they had these arguments that I was like, oh, interesting. Don't agree. But so it's a good way to connect. So the anniversary of the Revolutionary War is coming up. So I'm in the rumination stages of a great big historic piece, hopefully immersive, that will be various perspectives, and not just be kind of, white guys with muskets, but, people of color, women, British soldiers, right? And a wide array of what it was like to live that experience in that time period. And that's all I've got on that so far. We're just ruminating.
Connected to a specific historic spot or
Working on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
I had a chat with Jen Dorsey from the McCormick Center at Siena, which is the Revolutionary War Studies Center. And I was like, I have this project in my brain. And she was like, great. So
Awesome.
that's the partner, the first partner. We're going to have lots of partners. I have lots and lots of partners on that one. So that's probably 2 years out, but I need to write it and get partners and plans and all of those things. So I'm putting that out into the world right now.
Yeah. Committing to it.
Yeah. And that's a good way to build things like
Yeah.
that, right? Because if you're thinking about a project on that kind of scale, you want everybody to know, so that some fabulous person, with all of this expertise is like, I would love to be involved. And you're like, great.
You got an email from me earlier this week about the Capital Region Theater Festival. I figure if I keep talking about this and sending this out, it's going to stick somewhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, it's going to happen, but, it might just be,
It's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
So, excellent.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
In a
I
nutshell.
asked the two right people on this holiday break. I've been doing nothing. I've just been going to shows.
Gallivanting.
I love
Yes,
that.
gallivanting.
I love that. Greatest city in the world.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you went. I can't wait to get back there.
I just returned from London on an amazing trip.
We're making, being involved in and seeing theater is a regular thing that regular people do, which I love.
That's why I created the podcast, is just to have these conversations. I was up in Stratford this summer, and the waitress would greet us at breakfast. What'd you see last night? And I was like, this is heaven. This is, a place where you just talk about theater, and it's not only, an accepted form of conversation, but it's sort of the language, and that everyone on the streets and everyone that you're around talks about theater and lives theater, and it is a vital part of their lives, and that's what I want. So that's why I created this podcast. It's a little slice for me, but it felt like, in London, I was telling you, we stayed in Covent Garden. We were 10 steps away. We were, sleeping in the theater district. It was
Noisy.
Yeah. No, it wasn't actually.
Okay?
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah. And, the crowds, I was not quite prepared for that. It was, there were throngs, and not just like New Year's Eve, but like most nights. Yeah. It was a moving.
I just want to jump back in time and slap myself for complaining about that. When I lived in London, I'm like, ugh, Covent Garden or Leicester Square, it's a nightmare. And I'm like, you just didn't even know.
Yeah.
Didn't even know, girl, how good life was.
Yeah.
And it's a different sort of crowd than Times Square.
Oh,
Yes,
I
it is.
Chris goes nuts in Times Square.
I can't.
Not
Chris-
my
I
favorite.
can't do it.
Chris has what we call undiagnosed claustrophobia. Because he always complains he's getting tight or something. I'm like, have you seen someone about it?
Absolutely not.
I'm so sympathetic.
But that in Times Square too. It's I don't know. I think it's the
Yeah.
flashing lights and all of this stuff
So
bearing
Well-
down
much, just
upon
like-
you.
And the cartoon characters and
That
There's a lot
Midnight
going
Cowboy.
on.
there's an
and-
element.
Yeah.
They may have cleaned up the porn, but but
It's so
But
crazy.
there's a history, a soupçon of
Yeah.
it that remains.
the grifters.
In
Yeah.
the very fabric of the pavements,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The essence.
Yes.
Still
the
there.
Midnight
It's
Cowboy
not
is
quite
there.
the immersive guys and dolls.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, excellent. So we talked a little bit about what's going on, and let's take a look at the education from a different perspective, as far as Capital Region, and there are so many youth programs going on. Caitlyn, we work together in a youth program.
Oh, we do?
We're in the not so common kids summer camp, and that's so much fun. We did Newsies this year, and we're doing Adam's Family next year, and it runs 8 years old to 15. Which
wow.
when I tell people that, they're like eyes bug out, and now I understand because there is a. Yeah.
It's there's a huge difference even between the ages of 8 and 9. So it's like, that's a crazy.
Yeah, I think I want to try kickball for the young ones, so that when you're choreographing, I can go out and play kickball.
Sounds
with
amazing.
8-year-olds.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So, other youth programs, and you did the not so common camp production of Bells Are Ringing this year, but going to Wagner, did you feel prepared?
Oh yeah. I did 2 of the biggest kind of programs that I think shaped me as a young artist and kind of made me feel really prepared when I got to Wagner were SLOC, Schenectady Light Opera Company. Their youth shows are magical. I can't say enough good things about them, and like whenever I have parents from camp that are like, my kids are getting a little bit up there in age, they're going into high school, do you have any theaters you recommend? It's always SLOC. I wish I was younger and could still do the youth shows, just because it was so much fun, but it was the most like educational experience. Like I learned so much about theater, about being a professional. It was always a privilege and something I had a lot of pride about saying, I was in a SLOC show. And then I did the School of Performing Arts here at Proctor's, which, oh my goodness, I did Pippin and Aida. Pippin is to this day the best show I've ever done, my favorite experience ever. Kind of tied for first, actually, but I'll get into that. That talk about professionalism. Working with, like industry professionals and people like Freddie Ramirez and Stephen Uhas, who unfortunately passed away this year. Oh my God. Amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah. So when you went to Wagner, you felt, you had the vocabulary, you had.
Oh yeah, and compared to and a good example that I kind of think about quite often is I used to take dance classes, still do occasionally with Freddie Ramirez, my king, and he taught us so much vocabulary in the dance realm, which I'm very big on dance, and I didn't realize that wasn't necessarily a thing that a lot of students grew up with. And so I got to Wagner and we'll be doing these like vocabulary tests in our dance classes, and it all comes pretty easily. I know how to spell these terms. I know what they mean. There's a lot of people that, didn't have that education. And so I really am very grateful for that. Yeah, it's awesome. But that's just like one small example.
Yeah. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Were you about to say something? Please.
I was just, this is not my area of expertise. I get them once they get to college. But I think all kids should do theater.
Oh, yeah.
All kids, not kids that are planning on, yes, kids that are planning on studying the craft, right? But it's just so advantageous in every way, shape, and form, right? Yeah. And you see when you do projects with other departments, right? It's really awesome. But we have this deadline, this mentality, right? The show has to open by this date. This is how it has to happen. And it just gives you this understanding of time and space and getting things done and all the obvious stuff, right? Getting up in front of people, confidence, speaking publicly. But there's so many other skills that we don't, transferable skills that we don't necessarily look at. It's like, sending the kids off to theater camp, it's fun. It's like, yes, and it's going to make them better humans.
So much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Empathy, right?
Yeah.
Empathy. And, I would hire a theater stage manager for any job, anywhere, of any kind. Unless it required, specific, a chemist, maybe not. But stage managers are just capable of organizing, doing, accomplishing anything, right? Yeah. And thinking about design and collaboration, right? Because you cannot escape your creative team, and you need to make that work. So a kid having those experiences is utterly invaluable, as well as, right, empathy, right? Getting into a character, understanding someone who is different from yourself. I mean, to me, this is a laundry list of how we make a person that is going to be successful and happy in life. So send them all to theater camp.
One of the skills that I was just thinking of when you were talking about that is taking action, like just being able to just think on your feet and, go after something and be able to come up with physical ideas and, to go after what you want, on the spot.
And there's great ways to be sneaky with students with that. And be like, we were thinking about devising a project, putting something together. And like, great, here are the dates that are available. Right? And you're like, all right. And it feels like a gift. But in a way, it's like, all right, here's your deadline, friends.
Yeah.
Make some art. Yeah. Works great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great. Can you think of how the Capital Region could improve as far as students, as far as what does the Capital Region need in either high school or college that you see where's an opportunity for growth?
I mean, the producer answer is money. We need more money for the arts.
For what? Where do we need money?
For spaces and people.
Yeah, right? Spaces.
We need
people.
Right? Spaces, people. Pay the people.
I guess you're right.
Yeah. These kinds of models where we want to attract, and not just attract, but properly compensate the amazing, talented theater artists who are already here. Right? It would be nice if someone who graduates from Siena, from Skidmore, had some options to stay here. Yeah. I mean, they do, but there are fewer. So, in theater and education, having more opportunities there would benefit everybody. It's all tied together. Send all the kids to camp. Let's get some amazing teaching artists here. That's my initial thought is dollars and cents, because, the impact is enormous of the arts on human beings. So we should invest in that in a big way.
I see that. In spaces, I definitely see the need for some sort of, like those AFRAMs. We need an AFRAMs for theater. That has like 10 fields and a black box and rehearsal studios. Just build some tent out in the field somewhere and have,
Spiegel tent.
A Spiegel tent. Yeah. I went to Spiegel tent for the first time this summer. To have a space, a gym, a workout, and I mean a gym for theater, a place where people can come with their ideas and rehearse and perform and,
That would be lovely.
And, with so many buildings abandoned.
I know. And so many companies and things were like, let's get in there and do a thing, right? But, a broader, cohesive thing would be really, really good. And that would support students, artists, And that being said, right, the Capital Region, I left here when I was 20 and lived in Paris and London and kind of came back dragging my feet to teach at Siena, and then went, whoa, the Capital Region is a totally different place.
Isn't it amazing?
And wow. We have everything now. It's really cool.
It's crazy that I was in New York City for 13 years, and when I moved home, crying,
Sobbing.
just devastated, and yet every year since has gotten better and better, and more optimistic, and and just and I feel more hopeful and more with every day that goes by, as far as what's available and what you can create in theater and in the Capital Region, and
yes,
where it's going. So,
and it's nice. Teaching college students is really great. When it feels like the whole world is falling apart, and then you go into a classroom and your students are totally amazing, and you're like, okay, I trust you guys. We're going to hand things off to you. Generationally and artistically, right? My students have really beautiful ideas, and that that kind of keeps me going. Yeah. Seeing that everything's going to be okay. We might be up in water up to here, but they'll be making really exciting art in the process.
That's why I go to the theater so often, because I feel that way in the theater.
Yes, I know.
Not so much with the news
the New York
on.
Times, and I'm like, Oh, look at me pretending that I read the newspaper on the computer.
Caitlyn, do you see anything that you would wish for the Capital Region, as far as growth, as far as specifics, or?
I think something that you said that I was like, was, my plan after I graduate is to just head to the city. Like, I want to be in the city. But I love home. I love the Capital Region. And being at school has made me more aware of how much I love home, and it would be really nice if I felt like, I had more opportunities to, make money doing what I love here. Yep. But it's just, it's not as feasible. There are some great opportunities, of course, but with what I want to do, I'll have to be somewhere a little more.
Yeah. The big cities.
And I guess, we have to create those opportunities for ourselves, and we have to, hustle. But the hustle exists in the city,
For sure.
And
I'm always comparing us unfavorably to the United Kingdom, because that is something that I do.
Well, go ahead. As far as the arts are concerned.
Yeah. In France, there's this program, Intermittent de Spectacle, which, how do we even translate that? Seasonal performance worker. And there are government funds to sustain performers between gigs, right? If you live in Nice, in the south of France, and you do a lot of shows and gigs and performances when the crowds are there in the summer, but you don't have a lot going on in the winter, you can apply. As long as you can prove, right, that you are a very active professional performer or technician, you can have this, you have to do the work to get it, but be sustained by a government that cares about its arts and culture.
Yeah.
So, healthcare would be great. That's not attached to jobs.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed. People are like, but how in this country? They're like, how would we do that? Maybe you could look at all of the countries that do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I feel like many of my students even make choices based on, I need to do this in order to have healthcare, and I can't be freelance. I can't take these risks. And therefore, no one's taking risks artistically because they do not want to take a risk that they should not be taking with their health care. So this is a bigger picture than how to fix Capital Region things.
Yeah, no.
If we if artists had healthcare intrinsically, right? Then you're not going, oh God, I must have this job in this moment because, I just have to make sure that my family is taken care of. If we knew that we were going to be okay, looking and going, it's going to be a risky, wild couple of months, but let's do it. So I think there's just more space for innovation in other places, and government funding.
Yeah.
So.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. There was funding. I got lost. I think I was just mesmerized by that. Because, when it comes down to it, when you look at, there are so many other crazy things going on in politics that, when you start talking about, the arts, like, oh, please, we're over here setting the world on fire.
Mm-hmm.
We can't talk about, healthcare for artists, or funding the arts, oh, please.
Yes.
Even Democrats would be like, could you just
not right now. At least we have the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, and all that.
For
stuff.
now. Caucus in
long
2 weeks.
Nothing about my college students and their awesome projects. Much better.
You had mentioned Amaze and bringing it to your dean. I want to open a topic, perhaps. Perhaps I want to open it, or as far as censorship or schools choosing projects and how we go about choosing them, or what's happening in schools, both high schools and colleges, as far as the policing of what material gets performed and how shows get selected, or we don't want to take that risk, or
Absolutely. Do you guys do you have students on your season selection committee?
We do. We have a few.
Cool.
I'm not one of them, so I don't.
That's
I don't
a big
really
job.
know all the details, but we do. We do have some students.
That's awesome.
Involved. Yeah,
Glad to hear that.
Really, really cool.
We do too, and it it makes the process longer to basically show committee work and how it works to students every year. But they're going to have to do that, and it's really good to see how the sausage is made, right?
Yeah.
When they are in that position. So we're doing that right now for the next round. So Siena is fabulous about that, and we are a Franciscan college, and our friars are our greatest allies. There are, incensed, very right-wing people who come and are concerned about some very banal thing in my mind in the shows, and Siena does nothing but support us all the time.
Yeah, is this the public, or do you get it from faculty, or is it
faculty? And it's very rare. You just get the odd person who is offended by something.
Sure.
The way it happens in any kind of sphere. But, censorship in Catholic universities is common in the selection of material. It is not the case for us, which is great. I had mentioned to Patrick earlier, there's a thing in Amaze, and I was like, ooh, gosh. So I brought it to my dean, and I'm like, take a look at this. Just, am I going to have
a once over?
And she was like, yeah, it's great. So there's a little come see Amaze, come see what the thing was. But to my mind, as a producer, you don't want to put something in that you don't need in there. I'm going to use the example of Bear, a pop opera.
Sure.
Right? Cool show. The Catholic Church of that play is not the one that exists on the Siena campus. and to portray that production, to show that on our campus, I feel like would be insulting to our community, our very open, giving. The idea with our Franciscan friars are like, we accept every individual as they are, however they come, and value them. Now, that's a thing I can get behind. So we said, no, we're not going to do this play because it's just telling a story that we don't want to tell. The hard thing in universities is how far in advance you have to pick your season, right? You're like, what's going to be happening in the world at this point? I mean, I guess that's the case everywhere. You pick your season, you announce it, and then Russia invades Ukraine, and here you are doing Chekhov and going, well, you know, so that's always a challenge. But some things, we just did a production of Enemy of the People, and, you know, we knew that the environment would be a topic that would be very relevant. Right. Probably in 5 years and 10 years. Right. And more and more and more, it's still relevant. But, you know, you have to find a blend between getting students to learn all sorts of different styles and moments in history and doing things that speak to people and are relevant. Right. Right? Because you need butts and seats for anything to matter in the first place.
Yeah, I think any art that's worth its salt it has to provoke in some manner, that it's looking for a reaction. And whether that reaction, you know, however that reaction manifests itself, it could be offense, or it could be, you know, love, and you know, or an understanding, or you know, I never considered that before.
That makes me think of the Black Theater Troupe of upstate New York did a production of The Exonerated, and they brought it to Siena. So it was verbatim theater based on people who had been exonerated from being on death row. So I cannot think of a better way to have a conversation about the death penalty, which is a thing people don't necessarily want to have conversations about. They might just want to kind of shout at each other about it. But to just bring a bunch of stories into the picture. And they did come to Siena with that production. Professor Annie Rhodey Wright brought that in, and it was really amazing and really impactful. You know, she's not in the theater program. Just like, I'm doing this thing, and I'm like, I'm bringing everyone from the theater. And that's really important, right? We can talk about things like that through theater practice, right? And be talking about the play, but really be talking about a bigger picture and bigger issue through humanity, you know, and just looking, this is a real person, a real individual portrayed by an actor. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Caitlyn, do you have any thoughts on, or have you come across?
A little bit, yeah. Something that it's very, like, I guess, kind of niche and specific. I worked on a production called Used Records last year, and it was also with Jack Cummings III of Transport Group. Mm-hmm. And it was a devised piece. I wanted to talk more about this later because it was the play that changed my life. Cool. But it covered some pretty heavy kind of themes and elements, and we had a huge conversation specifically about, you know, we're seeing this kind of focus on like trigger warnings now and things like that, and we had this huge conversation that ended up being kind of a debate about whether or not to include that in our program. And, you know, it was going to give away the potential ending of the show. It was a devised piece, and we ended up changing it based on that conversation because a lot of people, you know, felt that it didn't need to go that way, to that far extreme. It dealt with suicide. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, that was it kind of opened my eyes to the whole censorship and theater thing, because, well, some of us thought that it would have been done in a very tasteful way, and I think that it definitely could have been a great ending for the piece. We ultimately decided not to do it. And, I don't know.
That is really interesting.
Yes, it is.
You have a collaborative effort that is discussing, an action and how to go about presenting that and whether to, that's fascinating.
It was I'll be honest, it was a crazy moment in my life. It I was like, wow, I'm an adult, and like what I say matters. We all went around, and it was my idea. We like passed around someone's keys in a circle, and we all kind of like said our piece. And so everybody was really involved. It was a very collaborative process, the whole thing. But yeah, that specifically, I was like, wow.
I keep thinking about the ending of Hamlet, and whether you had the cast sit around and say, how would you like to end this?
Yeah.
Is this ending?
That's the thing with like devised theater, is that we were able to end up deciding, but you can't always do that, obviously. So
this is what I love. This generation is, you guys are taking care of each other, right?
Yeah,
You're sitting here and going, do we need a content notice? How do we do this? What are the ways to empower people to engage with this work?
That was the whole thing. We were like,
that.
we were thinking about the audience. We were thinking about all the college kids that were going to come see this show, because at Wagner, you get 2 free tickets if you're a student to every main stage.
Cool. Love
awesome.
that.
So, we're thinking about the potential audience, and it was really cool.
Yeah, just letting people know that they can leave too, right? That's another thing that I love is saying, and I do that in my classroom.
Yeah.
I teach theater for social change, and we deal with some pretty gnarly issues regularly. And just saying at the first day of the semester, if you need to leave the room for any reason, under any circumstances, don't ask, just go. It's fine. Come and go as you need to based on the context. If you come back with a coffee, I'm going to have questions. But just questions. But that's not enough, right? You have to, partway through the semester, be like, hey, we're doing forum theater, and these topics are going to be kind of challenging. Yeah. So, reminder, if anybody needs to step, just giving people permission to not feel trapped is so important, right? But what you're talking about, where it kind of ruins the ending of the piece, that's where it's hard.
It was
that's hard.
Really, really, really hard.
Yeah. A vague content notice is always a good kind of like themes of. I got one of those coming for a maze. We got a vague content warning thing coming out on that guy. But I love that, and I love how you passed the keys so that there was an official, this is somebody's time to speak.
Yeah, it was, because otherwise we're all just arguing.
That's really cool.
I volunteered for Albany High School's Hairspray, and there was, a discussion about body issues and about race, and I went on for hours.
Yep. Yeah. We love to talk about it.
I was oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the thing with we had our the head of the theater department at the time. She was the lead in the show that I worked on, which that was a really amazing experience in and of itself. She's older, and so was the director, so it was really cool having that conversation with them about when they were doing theater even 10 years ago, like trigger warnings, that wasn't even part of the conversation. And so that was really interesting to get their insight.
And it's just a cool watching those changes as a theater artist that has been doing this for a while. I just took my intimacy coordinator training, just so that somebody on site knows how to deal with that stuff, at the college, not hiring somebody in every time. And it informed, like, yes, I can now do that, but it informed all of my teaching practice and how I deal with everything and consent-based practices. Whoa. Everybody should go do it. It was so meaningful, and just giving people agency, because why are you at college? You want to learn.
Great.
And creating an environment where you feel safe and comfortable to do so is just vitally important. So
where did you take it?
I did it with IDC, Intimacy Directors and Coordinators. Highly recommend. It was
great.
Really, really good. And there's I kind of went through the whole shebang, but there's a shorter consent-forward artist training course that's just like 4 weeks, I think, of like 3-hour sessions. It's fantastic. It's really good because we're never, ever done learning. That's the other fun thing about making theater, right? The world changes, the art form changes, and you better go with it, right?
Yep.
So building upon the knowledge that you have is one of the joys of making theater. I love it when some new exciting thing happens or some old exciting thing happens, right?
Yeah.
Original practice is Shakespeare. Wow.
Yeah,
it's 400 years old. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. And I can remember, thinking about a life in the theater and, all the things that you'd be able to learn and all the, directions you'd be able to go in, like the projects that you've talked about and, and original practices and the historical work. That is... it is a life of learning. When you commit to a life in the theater, it's
and learning that theater is not just the musical that you did in middle school. As soon as you start finding out what a rich, diverse tapestry of performance practice is out there, like this devised piece you're working on sounds absolutely fantastic.
It's amazing.
I think it's really important to empower students, and not college level even. I think we need to do these kinds of works with younger students too, and provide them opportunities to make devised work. And is it going to be the same quality as what you're doing? No, but to say, hi, we devised a play. It wound up being about mean girls in high school, but you devised it, created it yourself, and now that's part of your performance practice, and that's on the menu.
And I think that, when Wagner first announced last year that the third slot was going to be a devised piece, I was like...
What a rip.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I want to do a big fat musical.
Yeah.
But something, my teacher who was in it, she was like, Caitlyn, like, you should just audition. And it was actually really cool because the audition was a 5-minute interview with the director and to just kind of see, the type of person you are and your special interests and like, and I'm so glad that I did that. And it definitely took away this kind of preconceived notion that I had that, originally I was like, oh, a devised piece. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh. And now it's like, that's the type of theater that I want to do. Like, I love being a part of the process and doing the research. I'm a huge, I love being a student.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be in school forever. And I love learning and doing shows like this where you have to put in the time outside of rehearsal, outside of the process to just do like the, historical research.
Dramaturgy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I had a student call it actorturgy when
Yeah.
doing it as an actor, and I
Yep.
was like, okay, why not? New words.
I mean, I'm watching all these like beautiful movies that I wouldn't have watched if I wasn't a part of this. And
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I co-founded Harbinger, and we started producing plays, and and then which came from my acting class, and all of these things sort of fed each other, and then I created a podcast, but it's sort of like I want to be back in school. Like this is all comes from, being at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts 40 years ago, when from 9 to 11 you were in scene study, and 11 to 1 you were in voice, and then 2 to 5 you had rehearsal for your exam play, and then from 6 to 8 you did the guest artist that you were doing with the third year, so that you were, had all of that stuff going on, and you were life in the theater, that.
Yeah. So that the menu, I think, is really important to me in higher ed and also in secondary education, right? Like, especially if you're going to go to grad school and study further. You want to know, like, what do I like? Do I think Meisner is awesome? Do I prefer an outside-in methodology, right? Those are things that you want your students to know before they go out into the world to know themselves as creators by doing, right? Because you only know if you've done. This is a visceral art form, and we have to try it to understand it. So, is that a reasonable request for all the high schools in in the country? Probably not. But the colleges all need to provide that, I think.
I like that. I think that's actually an area in which the Capital Region has some devised theater, but I think we could use more. And actually, there's some like devised training or a devised program. Troy Foundry Theater does devised work, but I think there are even children's group. I saw a production of Huck Finn by Young Actors Guild, and that was pretty much a devised theater piece. It included music, and there was storytelling elements, and you got the feeling that the cast was involved in the staging of it, and it was an original piece. It wasn't an adaptation. Well, it was an adaptation of the novel, but by the company.
Yeah.
Or
That's
so
awesome.
Love that. We did one when I was at University of Kent. So the students are all familiar with Hamlet. Okay. Everybody knows Hamlet. So we had a devised project, and it was whichever students want to roll up and do this project. We did it after the other shows were cast because there were specific needs for the other pieces. And we were like, bring us some awesome humans and we'll make a thing. And as soon as they arrived in the room, they were not allowed to look at Hamlet ever again. And the production was Hamlet Remembered. And it came together. It was really wild, and it got really far away from Hamlet. There was a student with some World War I letters from her great-grandmother that related to, in some way, I don't remember. We wound up with this huge fountain in the middle of the room. I don't know. And bits and pieces of Hamlet. Philip Larkin poetry made his way in there. I mean, right, that What About Your Mom and Dad is very apt to Hamlet. So, that little things like that it's easy. It's easy to do a project like that and get students, and you find how wonderfully creative everyone is because they bring something to the table, and you're like.
You reminded me of that Anne Washburn play, Mr. Burns. Do you know that?
Yeah.
The Simpsons episode.
I love theater.
It's really cool. To do that kind of work, and just makes you doing different kinds of things just make you better at doing all of the things.
Absolutely.
Right? Like everybody needs to do a little tech in various different areas to understand and appreciate.
Still need to do tech.
Yeah.
I mean, there are areas of tech I just need to do. Like I need to build, and
And you find out what you're good at and what you're really bad at.
Yeah.
And then you love and appreciate those people who do the thing that you're really bad at in a new way.
Yep.
Lighting designers, I absolutely worship them. I don't know how they do it. Not a thing I can do, but then I can really look at it as a director and go like, oh, you are wonderful.
Yeah.
Right? That's special.
At Wagner, we have to take theater labs as well as doing tech assignments. We have to do 4 tech assignments throughout our time at Wagner. we had to take 2 theater labs. So my first theater lab, I did like a standard one, which was, we were building the sets for the main stage productions and like taking them apart. We learned a lot. And I learned, obviously, I'm not the best at lifting heavy things and like handheld tools. Like I'm not the greatest with a drill, but I did my second theater lab. I worked in the box office and I did like that sort of thing and marketing. And I was like, wow, I could do this. And then I had to take an intro to design course, which gave me so much appreciation for lighting designers and costume designers. And I really loved taking that course, actually. It was really cool. Yeah.
It's important, right? Because
Yeah.
we're collaborating with these people.
Yep. Yeah. You need to know how they work,
Yeah. Although, discovering that you're not good with handheld tools sounds scary.
I'm sure it was safely contained in your college setting.
Yeah. But it's just not my forte.
Yeah. So I think we've reached the point in the conversation where I ask, what is the play that changed your life and how? And Caitlyn, you referenced, what was it?
Used records. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much to say about that. For one of the first times in my career, I played, so the story follows this woman. She gets diagnosed with breast cancer. She goes on this quest to like find her daughter that she gave up for adoption in, I believe, the 60s. And she went to one of the homes for unwed mothers, which that was a huge element of it. And I was a social worker that ended up like, my scene was like, sign the papers to give us your daughter. Because it went back in time. And it was kind of, this is it's very specific to me personally, but, I'm on the shorter side. I'm a petite woman, and getting to play a middle-aged, mean, grouchy social worker, like, I know that sounds a little silly, but I felt so amazing doing it because I was like, wow, and somebody saw it in me that I don't have to play an 8-year-old all the time, which I love doing, but like, I want to do some like meaty stuff, and I'm training for it. So, so that element really, I don't know, it kind of just opened up my eyes to what theater can be for me. And then the fact that it was such a collaborative process was amazing because I also, I love the idea of directing and conceiving a piece. And so I got to learn a lot about that and work with, like, for real industry professionals who have worked on Broadway. For real. Worked on Broadway and have all these connections. And I think the last thing that I'll say about it was we did... it was such a cool process for so many reasons, but the way that we'd start out every rehearsal was for the first full hour of rehearsal, we would sit in a huge circle on the stage and we would read aloud, every day a new person was selected, a chapter of Charlotte's Web. To this day, still I'm not really sure, like, the meaning. It really bonded us as a cast, and it was an amazing story, of course. But so we did that. We did this thing called Knoxville, which we all lined up our chairs on the front of the stage, and it's like a classical piece. It's Knoxville. It's beautiful, but we had 3 poses, and we'd all have to move in sync with each other, and without, like, we were sitting in a straight line, so it's just our peripheral. And that, of course, really bonded us as a cast, and seeing how well we did each day. Like, some days our director would be like, guys, that was awful. Like, you need to do it again. And then the piece itself was, there was no dialogue, no singing, no dancing. We were talking to each other on stage, but, like, barely audible. The audience couldn't hear. And it was set to this gorgeous soundtrack that was, like, carefully curated. And we were part of that process. But this original, like, Spotify playlist that our director created was, like, 7,000 songs. Like, it was, and I'm not even exaggerating, it was insane. It would take you days to get through, and we all had to pick, we called it guest DJ. And so at the beginning of rehearsal, one person would be chosen, and we'd have to play a song off the playlist that like meant something to us. So yeah, it was a really cool process. I've never felt so close to a cast before. Yeah.
Super.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
It was amazing.
Now, in the character, the way in which you described this character, had you ever imagined yourself playing that?
No.
Yeah, I think that.
No.
I think that is.
When the kind of overall, I mean, we didn't know what the piece was going to be about. We met for like 5 rehearsals before winter break, and then winter break happened. That's when he like completely kind of came up with the synopsis, I guess. But then, you know, we get back and we're actually creating the piece and picking the music. And originally we weren't going to be talking to each other at all. It was just going to be like everyday movement. And then we ended up deciding in one of the first rehearsals, no, like we need to see the lips moving and like have conversations be part of this, even if you can't hear them. Totally forget what I'm talking about. But what was the question?
It was about you imagining yourself as.
So when this was first introduced, it was going to be about a family. And so in a way it kind of was, but I was like, okay, I'll be playing like the daughter. Or like I'll be playing like the long lost daughter that was given up for adoption. Like, okay. And I just like, and we had went around the table and one of the first like kind of table meetings, and we had talked about something in theater that kind of like aggravates us and like the way that we're cast. And I had said, you know, not that I don't love playing children, it's a beautiful thing to be able to tap into. Yeah, you know,
Another powerful thing about devised theater.
Yeah,
is like it's like to open up the casting and like.
Yeah, so our director was like, from that conversation, like, you didn't know this, but I decided like you would not be cast as a child in my show, and I'll probably never cast you as a child in one of my shows. So, and I mean, in this piece I'm working on now with him, I'm an adult, you know.
That is beautiful.
It's awesome.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Very grateful.
Thanks so much.
I love that.
Krysta.
All right, so I'm an academic, so I'm going to separate the answer into seeing and doing.
Excellent.
Okay? Because the first little piece is just very banal and very boring, right? I was in college, I was at Notre Dame, and I saw a summer Shakespeare production of Henry V and went, oh, you can do that with language and performance, right? The most banal theater story ever, right? We all go see a Shakespeare play at some point. Go. But the really kind of thing that I think changed my life and my practice as a theater maker was the hook, right? Henry V was like, come here. And then living in London during the kind of, I'll say embryonic, it was happening before then, right? But the early days of the popularity of immersive theater practices. So, you know, seeing Shunt's production, Money, and going to see early Punch Drunk stuff, and all of the small, crazy, beautiful pieces that I just remember images and moments of, and not the whole production, because I went to the theater all the time. It was gorgeous. And I actually remember leaving a cocktail bar on my Vespa on the way to see a production and wondering, I don't think it gets any better than this. And it doesn't. That was it. That was the best. I
love that.
It's good. It's new good. Now, right, you have your adventures and then you pass it on to your students so they can go have their adventures. But encountering those and then working on Richard Schechner's Imagining O, which was a devised piece based on Shakespeare's Women, and Pauline Réage's novel, The Story of O, which is kind of pornographic and kind of crazy, and meets Shakespeare's Women in a really interesting way. So we built a play with that. And I wasn't in the one at Kent, but I was in it when we took it on tour in India. And that was one of the coolest experiences of my life because in India, it's sort of like festivals and theater. We have the proscenium for the theater practice, or in Kerala, anyhow. India's a big place. We were just in kind of Kerala, Tamil Nadu area. So those things are separate, and festivals are a common part of everybody's life, right? Every time I'm in India, it's like, it's a festival. I'm like, which one? How exciting. So we did a thing where people were moving through the space and immersed in it. And engaging on a level that British and American people were just not comfortable doing because of that culture of the festival. And bringing that, this kind of cultures colliding in this really beautiful, interesting way was very special. So that, I think, was the play that changed my life in terms of my own practice and thinking about building work and engaging with audiences.
That's fantastic.
It was really
great.
Cool. So awesome. So grateful that I got to do that project.
Yeah. I love how both of you chose plays and in the manner in which it was presented or the manner in which it was performed is part of what bonded you to the piece.
Yeah, that's important, right? I'm a process person. I'm a product person. We all have to be. We have to be. But process is really interesting and important. And having kind of uncommon collaborators, which are spaces or places that aren't the usual, are really fun. When I did Votes for Women, when we did the centenary of women's right to vote in New York State, really glad we did that in 2017 instead of trying to do the national one in 2020. We moved it from space to space. We did it at Arts, Letters, and Numbers. We did it in Ten Brook Mansion and at Siena, and figuring out how an immersive piece works in all of those spaces. It was just such a wonderful adventure.
Yeah.
And the actors, it was a blend of adult actors and students.
Arts, Letters, Numbers was a wild piece because you went from like room to room, and one of them was out in the barn, one of them was,
So cool.
Yeah.
That always fascinates me.
Wild.
Yeah, and it was interesting the way in which each scene, fit the room that it was in, so.
And it changed every time we went somewhere because it had to live in those spaces. And it was like, guess what, everybody? Everything's different. So I wrote it, but it became a devised piece. And a lot of it was verbatim, right? Because these women suffragists, how can you not use their words and uplift those voices from the past? So it was kind of sort of devised. Got more and more devised every time it moved somewhere.
Yeah.
What do we do? So those early, get thrown in a van and wind up in some place outside London and encounter and find the play in there. I don't even remember the name of the production, but there was one where you were the boys and the girls being sent through the labyrinth for the Minotaur. It was amazing. It was so deliciously scary, and people kept disappearing. And of course, they were going off into other rooms and seeing other pieces, but you're they've been devoured.
There's something in New York City like that.
Cool.
Right now. It's like Shakespeare based, but it's
The Sleep No More?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's closing, actually. That's Punch Drunk.
Punch Drunk, yep.
Yeah.
They started off in London, and happily, it's gone all over the world.
Yeah, it was based on Macbeth.
So cool.
Yeah.
I was like, are we allowed to say it? Are we in the theater? Does this count?
Don't you always hesitate? But it's based on Macbeth.
I know.
I always have
somebody just
moment's hesitation.
Someone just referred to a MacBook as the Scottish laptop. I think I'm going to do that. The Scottish laptop instead of the Scottish play. I was like, I love that. Like, don't say MacBook. So I guess I'm going to mispronounce that forever now, too. I was so amused when I heard that. Yeah. Scottish laptop.
That's great. I think that's our time here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is great. I got my theater conversation for today. Thank you so much, Krysta, Caitlyn. It's been a fantastic time talking. Thank you for loaning me an hour of your holiday break. And, I'll see you back in school. I'll see you in the theater. I would love to see your production.
Yeah, I'll send you the information.
Same.
Yeah, that's fascinating. 1939. Yep. And looking forward to Amaze at Siena in March. I think we're March 16th through the 25th. We're doing In the Blood by Pulitzer Prize winner Suzanne Laurie Parks, directed by T.J. Collins, and it is at St. Rose Theater. And that, we'll have a free preview March 15th. That's Harbinger production. It is a play that imagines Hester from Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter as a homeless woman, black woman living under the bridge with her 5 children. And the actors who play the children also play the societal figures in her life who she interacts with, her social worker, her doctor, her reverend. It's a great piece, very theatrical and, on a literary basis, but also brings up, the homeless and, housing situation, the social aspect of it. So we're looking forward to that in 2024.
Great.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
And thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time on The Play That Changed My Life.